Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk About Christianity. I'm Keith.
And I'm Zach. Pablo, you're supposed to say your name. There we go.
And Zach is sitting here reading
reading up on my Spanish.
Reading up on his Spanish with a Spanish Bible.
Yeah.
And, it's educational for everyone.
It is. It is. Jesus.
Jesus te ama.
Yep. Sure.
Jesus loves you.
Jesus loves you. Okay. All right. Anyway, how's everybody doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Doing great.
Fine.
Doing great. Is that balloons behind you, Keith?
Oh. Why, yes, those are balloons behind me. Yes.
That's weird.
Matter of fact. Oh, is that weird?
Ah! There we go.
Feliz cumpleaños, Pablo.
Happy birthday to Pablo. Happy birthday to Pablo. Happy birthday to Pablo. Happy birthday to Keith. You're supposed to finish.
No, it's not my birthday. Oh, to Pablo. Yes.
Pablo.
Happy birthday, Pablo.
Happy birthday to our favorite translator in the world.
Wow. Is this like a national Peruvian holiday?
I think it is. Mm-hmm.
It
by
should
law.
be.
Yeah, by law, Peruvians are required to bring Pablo gifts. That's why he's got to be out of here by 10. Right, Pablo?
Yes.
Yes.
Pablo texted me at like 4:30 this morning. Hey, can we record early today? And I asked what time the party was going to start, but he wouldn't tell me.
Won't tell you.
I think he was afraid I would show up.
We're not invited, Keith, at all. We received no invitation.
Pablo, are you going to have a party?
Okay. Yesterday there was a cake for me.
What kind of cake?
Yeah, the family set up some cake for me in the afternoon yesterday.
Wow.
What kind of cake are we talking?
It's just a regular cake, just
sheet cake.
Balloons?
Yes.
Did you have balloons?
No balloons.
No balloons.
No presents.
What? Oh, you must be getting old.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why.
That's what happens when you get old.
Yep, he's getting to the birthdays. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Nothing comes of them.
It's like my father said in the morning, It's because in the morning we have breakfast with my family.
Yep.
And he said, "Hey, happy birthday, son." What he said? Okay, in English. You are entering at the age when life will take you away things instead of give you things, something like that.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
You got it?
Little birthday optimism.
You reach that point where life takes away more than it gives. Yes.
How old are you, Pablo? 31. Wow. Have you woke up yet with back pains?
What? Sorry?
Have you woke up with back pains yet? Or shoulder pains or leg pains? That's what they say when you get to the 30s.
I'm having knee pain. When I sit down for a while, I have terrible knee pain.
Oh no, that's like the beginning of the end.
That's the beginning of the end.
That's over.
Keith would know.
No, I don't have a problem sitting down. As a matter of fact, I sat down while preaching here a couple of weeks ago as part of the lesson.
Yeah, you didn't just sit down because, man, I'm tired. I'm going to sit down for a second.
Oh, but it was so hard to get back up.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there in that chair.
When I on my Bible study on Friday at church, I make a round, a circle, and I sit down. I prefer to sit down and teach the Bible, not to stand up. No, yes, because my knee.
Yes.
Hurting. Yeah, it must be because I played soccer for a long time, and
Oh, the old football injury.
Yes, the old football. Because I remember my injury when I was 15 years old.
Yep. That's it.
When you are on your
No
20s,
ball injury.
you, you feel
Birthday boat, he froze, but that's okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It's all good. So
yeah, it's all
okay.
good.
Let's see. Yeah, I've got lots of things going on here, but I don't really want to talk about them right now.
Okay. Pablo, how's everything going down there?
In Callao,
In Callao?
yes, everything is doing well. Members are giving away a stat for the children class.
Okay.
And one of the there's a girl. She is 12 years old. When she entered to the church, she was like 9 years old, and now she is like the assistant of the teachers for the children
Good,
class. Yes.
good.
So I put her as an example last Sunday when I was telling the members to give away maybe scissors, paper, colors, markers, things like that. No, I told the members the things that you're give away, you're investing things on these children. As you can
Right.
see, one of the child or one of the little girl that was a student from the children class, now she's an assistant. So take this opportunity like an investment of the
Right.
children classes. Yes.
Well, at Paintsville, we don't really have anything going on, but we did lose a member of the congregation here yesterday. Beautiful soul. Keith knows her family. She was a wonderful young lady. She left this world too early, in my opinion.
And
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, certainly our thoughts and prayers are
Yeah.
with the family there.
Yeah.
Very, very, it's just a heart-rending situation,
Mm-hmm.
and very.
She was one of those people that you come into contact with, and I'll say this about her, and then we'll move on. But she was one of those people that you come into contact with, and you find inspiration in the way that she dealt with her life because of all the things that she went through in her life. She
Right.
went through
She
went
went
through
through a lot.
health problem after health problem after health problem, but she kept enduring. She kept, finding joy in the life that she was living. And I don't know if there would have been anybody who was happier than she was. Every single time I ever talked to her, she was happy. She had always had a smile on her face, no matter what she was going through in her life. And there at the end, she got a pretty bad form of cancer, and that is, what led to her passing away. But it was up until then, you would have never known she had cancer. I mean, it was, she's one of those people.
Yep.
She embodies that inspiration.
And to the family, we love you very much.
Yeah.
And our prayers are certainly with you right now.
Yep.
And that's going to be something that the church there is going to be wounded from for a while.
Yep. You could feel it last night at midweek Bible study.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. This is Thursday, the 5th of April that we are recording. 4th of April. That
What
we are
episode number is this, Keith?
Hang on a second. I'll tell you. I think this is number 83. I'm not sure.
Season 2.
Yes, season 2, episode 38, and track number 83 overall. And we are, I mean, we're,
that
the weeks,
100th episode.
The weeks just keep marching by, and we are delighted that we are able to continue recording this program. And we of course want to say thank you to you, our listeners. And I want to remind you, I'll try to do it again at the end if we have time, but go to our website. We've got email updates or alerts that you can sign up for, and we will send you an email when we get new episodes posted. And we're always looking for ways to increase our listenership, and it's well, I don't want to start whining. I'm afraid
don't
this
start
will sound
whining,
like
Keith.
whining, but it takes some work to put this together, and I appreciate you guys for your willingness to make the schedule work to be able to do this. And we've all got things going on, and we have to juggle our schedules sometimes. But I appreciate that very much. So yeah, number 83 overall. We're approaching that. Actually, we are what? We are 7 weeks, 8 weeks away from ending season 2 and being ready to start on season 3, the 1st of June. So that's pretty exciting. Now, that's that second week of June. Pablo and I may just have to record it without you, Zach, from Chimbote.
Chimbote.
Yeah,
that's fine with me.
That would be cool if we were able to record.
We can make it.
I don't know if we'll have internet access.
Just get a chip, put this on data there. It will be okay.
What he said.
Yeah, he said.
We just need chips. Yeah.
Yep.
So, we'll do our best to make it work. We got 2 months to get that figured out. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last couple of weeks.
Thanks for the happy birthday.
Oh yes.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes. Maybe my presents are coming the next week, but it's okay. Don't worry. The present from the States. I know it's distance.
Right. You just imagine that there's presents in the mail for you. That'll help you through this tough time of not getting any presents for your birthday. Just imagine they're there, okay? Just imagine that Keith and I sent you something. Okay?
Yeah. Thanks for the iPad Air 64 gigabytes. Thank you. I take it.
You're welcome, man. No problem.
Okay. Last couple of weeks we've been talking about Colossians chapter 3. We wanted to just take that chapter and kind of take it apart as we went through. And the first week we got through 2 verses. Last week we got through like 2.5.
Yeah.
We were talking about Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5. And so we want to kind of pick up there. And we made this point last week about Colossians 3 and verse 5. Of the things that Paul mentions in this verse, so many of them have to do with desires that we have. And it's kind of interesting that, Paul is writing, he says, therefore put to death your members which are on the earth. And he uses that word that describes body parts for members.
And it's almost like they're active body parts in your life, and you have to put these things to death. I mean, you got to put them down. You got to kill them.
Yeah, and then he turns around and all of the things which he mentions are attitudes, or they begin in our heart. They aren't things that begin with our body parts. Whether it's our hands or our eyes or feet or whatever, these are things that begin in our hearts. And last week we talked about fornication, and we talked about how that word describes an act that is against the law of God.
Keith went on a little bit of a tangent, but it was a tangent that was a little bit helpful, though. It was a helpful tangent.
A little bit helpful.
Yeah, little bit helpful.
Then we talked about uncleanness, and then we come, and I'm reading from the New King James. And by the way, yesterday I don't know, I had to go pick Emma up from school, which I don't normally do, but I got a call at like 2:30. Hey, can you go pick Emma up? And so I went to pick her up, and there was a Bible in the car, and I got to the school, and I'm sitting waiting for her to come out, and I picked up that Bible, and it was the old King James, which I haven't read that much over the past couple of years, and I'm sitting there reading from the old King James, and I'm thinking, wow, there is a really big difference. You know, once you get used to reading the New King James, there really is a big difference. Now, Zach, that was a tangent.
Yeah, that was a tangent.
That had no purpose whatsoever,
Right.
you know.
I
But
thought you were going to say, "Oh, well, I read Colossians 3 verse 5, and this is what it said," but nothing.
well, and I didn't have to read Colossians 3 verse 5 because I know what it says. It says for this next word, inordinate affection.
Wow.
And in the New King James, it simply says passion.
Right.
But here's and you might wonder, how did they go from inordinate affection to passion? And you know, what does this actually mean? Well, here's how I would define this third term that Paul says we must put to death in our lives. Urges. You know, and we have urges all the time. It's like if you're driving home after a while, Zach, and you decide, you know, hey, instead of turning right, I'm going to turn left. I'm going to go this way, and you just kind of do it on a whim.
Right.
You know, honestly, I don't think God cares what street you take home. Although we could make an argument against that. You know, if for example you have a problem with alcohol and you choose to take the street home that all of the bars are on, that could be a problem.
Yeah,
you know,
that could be a problem.
I need to stay off of that street. But you know, just we all do things on whims.
Right.
Pablo, do you understand what I'm saying there? Okay, good.
Sí, señor. Go ahead.
We'll do things suddenly without any, you know, real motivation, or, you know, and sometimes you'll be thinking, well, why did I do this? Why did I go this way? Sometimes we will say things, and as the words come out of our mouth, we're sitting there going, why am I saying this? It's kind of like this entire program. But you know,
Good one, Keith. Good one.
But you know, it's these urges that Paul is talking about here in Colossians 3:5 that are leading to sin and following those urges.
It's like he's almost saying, you know, you need to eliminate all the precursors that are going to lead to all types of sin in your life. And if you can eliminate those precursors, then you can metaphorically put to death these active members in your life, the sins that come from these precursors. But you know, that's a whole lot harder in application than it is in saying it.
If you know that there is something that contributes to sin in your life, and it may be driving down that street.
Right. It can be as simple as anything like that, you know, driving down a street or walking in a certain place in a convenience store or something of that sort.
You know, those are areas you need to stay away from. And you might have that urge to take that path or go that way or say those words.
And you can act, and people act like
mentioning that.
Right.
But the reason I keep mentioning that is and I know that it's not unique to our generation and our time, but our language is so filled with innuendos and suggestions. You know, we really need to be careful what we're saying to others, that we're not suggesting something to someone else that could lead to sin.
Well, when it comes to different types of counseling, you know, for drug or alcohol, they call them triggers. And I'm a firm believer that we have triggers when it comes to our sins. You know, there's certain times in your life, certain times throughout the day where you may experience a trigger. Maybe you're in your room alone. Maybe you're with some friends that you shouldn't be with, and you feel like you need to sin or something of that sort. And those are your triggers. If you can identify the triggers, then I think that you can identify the source of the problem. And if you get rid of the triggers, then you're going to get rid of the problem.
So we can boil all of this down with this word passion or inordinate affection, depending on how your Bible translates it. I'm not even sure what the English Standard says. It says passion also. But we could boil it down is this: put to death the triggers.
Mm-hmm. Put to death triggers, things that promote or things that influence you in a bad way, in a way that'll make you sin.
Yes, and you know what those triggers are.
Everyone knows what their triggers are. We could act like we don't. We can act like we don't acknowledge them, but we do.
We know what they are.
And
if we don't know, we had better be figuring it out.
Exactly.
So the next word or phrase that is used here in Colossians 3:5 is evil desire. Now, the old King James uses a word that we just don't use that much, but I kind of like it. It's fun to say. It's kind of like you trying to say blessed in Spanish.
How's that go again? What's blessed in Spanish, Pablo?
Bienaventurado.
That's just too long of a word, man, for a 5-letter word. I'm sorry. That's just too long. Too long. Somebody needs to put a stop to the Spanish language. It's too long.
But it's fun to say.
It's fun to say.
If you can say it, yeah.
Right?
Right.
Instead of the short blessed, even the sound blessed. Bienaventurado.
Blessed.
And Zach's giving the hand motion there as he does it. Blessed.
Blessed.
So
Pablo,
anyway,
you got anything you want to add?
No, it's okay. It's clear till now.
Okay.
You're being very quiet there. So anyway.
No, not quiet. Just learning to.
There we go.
Evil desire is what it says in the New King James. Evil concupiscence.
What?
Concupiscence.
Somebody needs to put a stop to the English language too.
What is it, Pablo?
Concupiscencia.
There you go. And what does that word mean, Pablo?
Concupiscencia is like
Zach can't even pronounce it.
When you in Spanish we say concupiscencia when you cannot control your desires, no?
Okay.
No? You're more an emotional person.
Okay.
Not
so you do things out of emotion. You commit acts and things in your life out of emotion. Okay, I can get that. I can grasp that. I just can't say it.
Well, here's what the word actually means in the original language. It means a desire for something that is forbidden.
Okay.
And something that you are not supposed to have, but you and oftentimes as we study Colossians 3 and verse 5, let's be honest. Most of the things that Paul is talking about in this verse are related to sexual sins.
Mm-hmm.
And this evil desire that is mentioned here is no different at all. He is talking about a desire for something that you cannot lawfully or rightfully have. And as Pablo mentioned with the word in its Spanish usage, a lot of times emotion, we allow emotion to take over.
We do. Mm-hmm.
And when that emotion is allowed to be our drive and to be what is propelling us forward, which is just another way of saying our drive, Paul says this is something we've got to put to death. We stop having the desire for what you lawfully and rightfully cannot have.
Well, instead of thinking with the common sense of our mind, we think with, our emotions. We think with the desires that are in our heart. And a lot of times that can lead you down some paths that you don't want to go in your life. And if you reflect upon those decisions that you make with your desires rather than the mind that you have and the conscience that you have, and maybe your mind's molded upon foundation principles that come from God. I mean, no matter what you base your decision off of, if you look at the bad decisions that you make in your life, the decisions that lead to sin, oftentimes you are at the center of that decision. Not just because you made that decision, but because your desires are at the heart of that decision, not God's desires for you. And I think that has to do with what Paul's saying here. We need to be looking to God for guidance in the decisions that we make instead of our desires for guidance.
And a lot of times we will respond to things like this and ideas like this by saying, well, you know what, I really can't help what I want.
Right.
Well, you know what, you may not be able to stop that initial urge that you have for something, but you can stop the action before you follow through with that urge. You have that power.
It's just a different way of saying I can't control myself, and you can't control yourself.
You know what? When I talk to a psychologist friend, and I talk about this Bible about sexual immorality, he told me, Pablo, you cannot judge biological things with moral things. That's what he said.
Right.
And and that's what people in the world right now, use that expression to make a self-defense. Okay, I cannot control it because it's biological. No, you talk me about just moral. No, that's what the world and what people said.
Well, that reflects upon society and the culture that we live in too. Everybody's, well, I can't control what I want to do. It's just how I am, and you can. I'll never forget Spencer Furby. He said he had something to say about that, didn't he, Keith? When he got on.
He did.
When he got on the program.
He did. I think about milkshakes.
Okay, this is going real left field, but okay, we'll go down this path with you, Keith. We'll go down this path. I love
milkshakes. I
love
do.
Milkshakes too, man.
But it was about a year and a half ago that I said, you know what? I've got to stop.
I got to stop drinking some milkshakes, man.
I got to stop drinking milkshakes,
Right.
and it's like anything else. So once you give way, the next time you try to stop something is going to be more difficult.
I can give two examples too. Both my grandfathers smoked at one point or another in their life, and today smoking's kind of regarded as it's just this addiction that hardly nobody can get over. I mean, they got gum, they got patches, I mean, they got everything, but apparently these things still don't work. Well, both of my grandfathers quit smoking by literally laying a pack of cigarettes on the table and just stopping. But it's the willpower. If you want to stop, if you have the want to, then you're going to be able to stop whatever you want to stop. But if you don't have the want to, you don't have the desire, then no, you're not going to be able to control yourself. You're not going to be able to control the desires that you have or the addictions that you have. But you got to have the want to.
And that's a tough one, because it kind of goes back to what Pablo was saying with the biological side of things, because there are and I don't know how we got to talking about addiction, but any addiction, any addiction,
right?
There is mental, emotional, and physical that is involved with it. And being able to harness all of those is what is challenging in disrupting that cycle and then and maintaining that.
Being able to harness all of those is what's able to get you through that addiction.
If it were as simple as saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore,
right?
Then there wouldn't be the word wouldn't even exist.
Pablo probably has some insight on this, given the type of degree that he's wanting to go into when it comes to addiction.
As addiction is biological, mental, and emotional things. It's not easy to say, okay, you must stop this. No.
Right. You can't.
Because actually, this kind of people repeat that on their head. No, I must stop. I must stop. I must stop. They cannot make it. No. If they cannot make it by themselves, no, just saying a word, hey, God love you, please stop doing this. It is not as easy as
Right.
it seems.
And am I wrong, Pablo, or is it easier when you have somebody who's with you? That's why when you're addicted to alcohol in AA meetings, they give you sponsors, and I would say that would be the same kind of
Yeah,
concept that they use
yeah.
in drug addiction as
You
well.
know, this is most typical in women addictions, according to statistics in Peru. When they met someone as a boyfriend, and the boyfriend introduced them to drugs, maybe the boys at certain point they might stop doing this, but the girls no. The girls
Right.
continue doing this because they are more emotional. You know, they are
Mm-hmm.
more
Right.
sensitive. That's it.
Well, and the point of all this is that all of those have to come together to be able to curtail or to break that cycle. And it's not just as simple as saying I don't want to do that anymore.
No, it's not.
And that can be applied. And here's the thing about it: when you start looking at different kinds of addictions and different problems, we also have to. And here's the real problem: if it were just if everything were balanced and equal in everyone, then we would be able to come up with a solution to stop addiction, whatever that addiction is.
Mm-hmm.
But for one individual, and as Pablo was describing there, the emotional part of that addiction may be stronger than the physical part. And so if you're trying to treat the physical part, um, but not treating the emotional part, then what good is that going to do?
And it all comes back to the desires. I mean, it all comes back to your desires, just like what Paul is saying here. If you have the mentality or the desire to stop, then yeah, it may take a while. There may be a few steps that you have to go through, but you can do it. You can do it. If you have the desire to stop some sort of sin in your life, then you can do that. Now you have to have a desire, you have to have a want to do it, but you can do it.
Okay, so let's move on here in Colossians 3:5, or we're not going to get through the half a verse today.
We were doing good. We went from 2 to 2.5. I thought we were going to make it to 3 today, but
yeah, we can do it. But okay, so the last thing that Paul mentions here is covetousness, and then Paul gives his own definition there, his own inspired definition,
right.
and he says covetousness, which
Idolatry.
is idolatry. And we look at, wow, I mean, you can look at it from the angle of the covetousness, or you can look at it from the angle of the idolatry, and it all goes back to desire, though, especially with Paul's explanation there. This covetousness that he describes is being put before everything else, and that is why he describes it as idolatry. But is that not what idolatry is?
Yeah,
Idolatry is I'm going to put what I want
right.
before anything else.
And I find this a funny concept too, because a lot of people think, well, idolatry doesn't exist anymore because people don't worship golden calves. People don't do all of these things. They don't bow down to a golden statue, pagan statue like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were tempted to do. They don't have to do all of these things. But in our lives, we build idols. We have idols. There's a lot of people who I mean, I enjoy sports, but there are a lot of people whose sports are an idol. They're an idol that they put before everything else. You have different, and we think that it doesn't exist anymore, but it does. And it even comes down to just the desire to have what everybody else has. I mean, are you putting that in front of God? Or are you putting your chase for this boat or this car in front of your desires to please God? Because if you are, then it's an idol.
And you brought up the sports, and I've wondered before if Paul were alive in our day today.
Right.
And Paul, who had been to all of those different places. He had been to the city of Ephesus and seen the temple of Diana. He had been to Corinth and seen the temple to Aphrodite. He had seen all these pagan temples. And if Paul were to go to a sports venue today, and anyone, football, baseball, basketball, whatever, would Paul go in and look around and compare that to one of those pagan temples that that he saw in his day and time? Because you stop and think about it.
Well, I was listening to a sermon by Ben Wright, the person who used to preach here at Paintsville congregation, and he was talking about that. He said, I'm not one of these people who is completely opposed to sports, but he said, wouldn't you like to have the passion and the enthusiasm that people have when they're watching the Super Bowl? Wouldn't you like to have that same passion and enthusiasm in a worship setting? And the passion and pouring out their hearts for their teams and things of that sort. And if you think about it, we really do. We pour our hearts and our passions into sports, but are we pouring our hearts and our passions into the Christian life that we're living? Are we pouring our hearts and our passions into the worship that we give to God each week? That's the question that we need to answer.
Covetousness, Zach. What you think about it?
It's bad.
Oh, it's bad. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm trying to get us back on track here.
Right. It's bad.
It's bad. Oh, it's bad. Yeah. Covetousness. That's bad.
That's right.
But when we look at the idea of covetousness, though, we are, we're looking at yet another desire. The actual definition is a greedy desire to have more. Mm-hmm. And when we think of that desire to have more, the more that we would desire is left undefined.
Yeah.
And so what I desire may not be what you desire, and most certainly would not be what Pablo desires. We know what Pablo desires. He desires a 64 gig iPad Air.
Birthday present.
Yeah.
Of any sort.
Basically.
Pack of batteries. Some socks. Something. Guys, get this guy a birthday present.
Pablo, I will bring you a present. It may be a pair of socks.
But you're going to get something.
They may be used, but you will get something.
Black ones, please.
Black socks. Okay. So if anybody's looking to get Pablo a gift for his birthday, he wants black socks.
Right.
Okay. Paul says, hey, this is idolatry.
I have one more thing to say when it comes to covetousness. I think that, while people may not think that we have that problem today, I think it may be, and I don't mean to make a generalization out of this, but I think that may be the largest one that we could relate to that's in our lives. I think everybody really struggles from covetousness. It doesn't matter who you are. I think you struggle from it because, like I said, people build idols in their lives. They suffer from idolatry. We suffer from idolatry maybe even more today than they did in these times.
It's just not quite the same form.
It's not the same form, but it's the same concept.
Not the same form. So, I'm sorry, I'm writing numbers down here so I don't forget where we are.
What time check?
We're good. I don't know how much time I don't know how much time we've got left, but we're good. We're not there yet. So
okay.
Okay, so that is verse 5. And yeah, there was a lot in verse 5, and that's why it took so long to get through verse 5. But we go on to verse 6, and Paul begins a new thought, but it is still tied to what he had talked about there in the previous verses. He says, because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience. And Pablo's like raising his hand like he's got something to say.
Yeah. No. Just 1 minute. Very urgent. Okay? Continue. I'll be back.
Continue.
Okay. So the word that is used for wrath there is it is actually describing temper.
Right.
And we we know what temper is.
Right. We all have tempers.
We all have tempers, or we have all experienced someone else's temper.
That's definitely something we can relate.
And you tie that back into the things that we just read in the previous verse, and how our temper could come to play in any of those things. And then you think, hey, these are the things that God sees in us that are stirring God's emotions against us.
Right.
And maybe you could look at it individually, maybe you could look at it as the human race, but these are the things that God looks at, and he says, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it all wrong. Yes. Right. And so he says that and when you look at what Paul says here within this verse, because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the children or the sons of disobedience. Sons of disobedience describing, yes, individuals, but more following the pattern of, and going back to verse 5, those who let their desires run out of control.
Right.
And you can almost have the image or the picture of God pouring his anger or his wrath out upon a generation that would allow their desires and their passions to run rampant. And again, I don't think it's necessarily fair to pick on our generation alone, but we look around us today, and especially here in the States, no, I can't even say that. I think it's just true to people everywhere. Very little self-control being exercised.
Well, you're told that you don't
as a society.
Right, and you told you don't have to exercise self-control. That whatever your desires are, why don't you go fill them? You only live once. I mean, you live the best life that you can possibly live, be as happy as you can possibly be, and fill all the desires that are in your heart. And that's what we're told in this society. And as a Christian, that can be very challenging to kind of combat that attitude with the attitude that we read of in Scripture.
And I saw a meme yesterday that it was Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and Charlie Brown saying, you only live once, and Snoopy responding by saying, that's not right. You only die once.
That's right.
Live every day.
Yeah.
And so we go on to the next verse. See, I'm gonna get through more than one verse here. Verse 7, he says, in which you yourselves once walked when you lived in them.
Them referring to
those things that need to be put to death.
Yep.
And he talks about those things that they are, okay, if they weren't alive and well, there wouldn't be any need for them to be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go through a list of things such as Paul mentions here in verse 5, the fornication, uncleanness, the passion or those urges, the evil desire or concupiscence. See, it's just fun to say.
Yeah.
And the covetousness, and you say, nope, hey, I'm good. I don't have a problem with any of those things. I'm okay in my life. And so there is nothing that Paul mentions here that I need to put to death. Paul acknowledges here in verse 7 that may very well be. You may be at the point where those things are not living in you and reigning in your life, but Paul says you've been there before and you may still be there.
Past tense, walked. Once walked. That's the past tense.
Well, to whom is he writing? He's writing to Christians. Right. He's writing to those who are supposed to have left those things behind. And I say supposed to because if all of those things were dead and had no impact or influence on our lives at all, what would be the point of him saying put to death? Instead, Paul would be saying, yay, good job. You put these things to death.
Right.
Paul is telling us that those things, okay, it is not likely that any of us are ever going to get to the point in life where we don't have urges for something.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Every single day. When you're young, you have urges. When you're old, you have urges. It doesn't change no matter your age. Thus, the desires and the urges change.
Yes, the desires and the urges may change, but the fact that we have desires and urges is not going to change.
Right.
And so, and that's one reason I was kind of picking on milkshakes a little bit earlier because, you know,
you love milkshakes.
That was kind of a safe one.
You're still proud that you put those milkshakes to death. You're still proud.
I think I have had three milkshakes in the past year and a half. That's it.
So you haven't completely put them to death.
And one of those was the night that the full malaria hit me.
Right.
And so I didn't have one for months and months after that. You know, it was like, oh, you know, if a milkshake's going to give me malaria, I think I'll stay away from it. But,
thought he got malaria from the local DQ. That's what he thought.
Well, I have to.
I wasn't sure what caused it.
Well, you know, there's
here we go talking about malaria again.
A lot of hepatitis, you know, going around. It was running rampant over there a couple of months ago, but a couple of different restaurants in the area ended up being shut down because of hepatitis. But you know, hey, hepatitis, why not malaria? But, you know.
Anyway, here we go talking about malaria again.
Not even sure where that milkshake came from that night. I don't know. I don't remember.
There's only like 3 restaurants that sell them, really.
Well, you know,
Pablo, he's back.
You got Dairy Queen and
sorry,
McDonald's are so.
Hardee's is pretty good.
But the Frosty from Wendy's, that is like the gold standard. Right. You know, but Pablo, welcome back. We were.
Thank you. I'm sorry. There was a very urgency. I need to fix it.
Yeah, you should be sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's necessary for me. Zach feels like you need to apologize to him, but.
Disculpa, señor.
Okay, whatever that means. Thanks. Thanks, Pablo.
There was an apology.
You need to apologize to me on your birthday because I got gifts and you didn't. You need to apologize.
I'm not following that line of thought, but anyway. Okay, so
anyway, okay, that's funny.
These things may be lying dormant within you, but Paul says you need to put them to death.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's you could almost view it. Well, no, I don't want to go there. That example could get messy. So anyway,
go there. Keith.
Sometimes it's better just to stop before you get too far in there. Okay, but
Come on,
Paul
Keith,
acknowledges there, verse 7, in which you yourselves once walked when you lived in them. Did you catch the contrast that he gives there?
Right.
He says you lived in those things. Those things need to be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to keep living. Those things do not. Those things don't need to be left living in you.
Well, he also says lived as in almost like they reigned or they ruled over their life. And, you know, a lot of times I think we don't understand the brevity of what it means to actually put these things away. You know what I mean? We think that we put them away, but then we get on a little bit down the road and they start coming back. to put these things away, like we said, you have to identify one. You have to identify the trigger for whatever causes that desire, but you also need to identify, what's God's thoughts on this and what are my thoughts? Whose passions am I following? Am I following God's desires for me, or am I following man's desires for me, or my own desires for me? And those are two important things that we need to differentiate.
So let me do a time check here. We got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So
Enough.
okay, so we can, Pablo, we're not going to make you late for your party, are we?
No, there are
Okay,
priorities. It's okay.
Priorities.
They know I
love it.
got
That
priorities.
is great.
They know I got priorities.
They know I got priorities.
They know I got a schedule.
Keith and Zach, they're the priorities.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. Oh,
Been made a priority.
Yes.
Thank you, Pablo.
Feeling pretty
was
good
my
now.
Zach, that was my apology.
Oh, that was your okay. Keith's not been made a priority a lot lately either, apparently. So that made him feel real good too. So you gave him a little bit.
Oh yes, I'm feeling great now. Okay, so in verse 8 of Colossians 3, Paul sort of changes analogies, because through these first 7 verses, we have seen the death contrasted with life. That's what we've seen all through these verses. And disculpe. That's yeah. I wanted to make sure I apologize to both of you there. So in verse 8, he changes his analogy and he says, "But now you yourselves are to put off all these." And he's going with that image of clothing.
Right.
And take these things off just like they were a dirty shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's going to, in verse 10, put on the new man. Take off the dirty stuff, take off the stuff that is old and worn, and put on the good stuff.
Well, it's the same concept that he uses in Galatians as well, with putting on Christ after baptism. So you've got that. That's a common theme that seems that he uses in his letters.
Yes.
This idea of clothing.
Well, and I think, though, that this may be of the times that he uses this analogy, this may be the strongest in my opinion.
Well, the analogy of clothes are a great analogy that he uses. That really relates to people, because every single day we put on clothes, and every single day we may put on some things that we shouldn't put on as far as characteristics in our lives. Everyone
I know wears clothes.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a factual statement right there. I'm sure there are people in this world that don't. But
I was going to say, some of you may know people who don't wear clothes, but everyone that I know wears clothes.
Pablo, everybody wears clothes too, right? I mean,
yes,
that's not. Yeah.
Of course,
yeah.
No doubt.
So here's the thing about it, though, is that there are some clothes that. Well, okay. Let's look at it this way.
I don't know where he's going with this.
Why? Yeah, I don't know. Why do you wear what you wear?
It's comfortable. It looks good.
Do you think?
Yeah, I like the brand. I like the feel. I like the colors.
Okay, so this is all about you,
right? Well, I mean, they're my clothes. They're on my body.
We can work with this. We can work with this. There are some clothes that would be appropriate in some situations that would not be appropriate in others. Right. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I couldn't wear my Bermuda shorts to church. I mean, that's not you. That wouldn't exactly.
I've seen it done before, but it's there are some things that might be appropriate in some situations that but there are let's look at it this way. If you get a hole in your favorite shirt, What are you going to do?
Or if I get a hole in my clothes?
In your favorite shirt?
In my favorite shirt. I'd probably just throw it away. Get a new shirt.
Favorite?
Well, I mean, I guess I could patch it up, but I wouldn't want to patch it up. I'd have somebody do it for me. But I guess you could patch the shirt up. I could get my personal tailor to do it, Miranda.
Personal tailor. Wow.
Oh,
Personal
wow.
tailor, Miranda.
Personal tailor, my future wife. Wow.
That's right.
That sounds American.
If I pop a button off
Miranda
my shirt,
listen
she
to the
sews it back
program?
on for me. Huh?
Does Miranda listen to this program?
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
I never would say that I hope we don't have listeners, but I hope she does.
She'll be listening to this episode. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get a and it may be a really nice shirt, Zach.
Okay.
Your favorite shirt.
Right.
But if it gets stained, and I tell you what, that drives me nuts. You get a stain on a shirt and you can't get the stain out.
Yeah.
And it may be a really comfortable shirt. It may be a fantastic shirt, but you
now
might as well throw it away.
When you wear it. Yeah, you look dumb when you wear it.
Yeah, you look dumb when you wear it. Thank you for saying that. That is going to fit right in with what we're talking about right here. Okay, so you are a Christian, and Paul mentions these things in verses 8 and 9, and he says, "Put off all these things." You're a Christian. Anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds. Okay, to take what you said, Zach, and blend it in with what Paul said, if you are a Christian and these are the things you are wearing, you're just going to look pretty dumb.
You're going to look pretty dumb. People are going to see you, and then you're going to really look dumb because they're going to see the way that you act and the characteristics that you embody in your life, and it is not going to be very reflected on you.
So, Paul, in talking about this, again uses the past tense.
Mm-hmm.
He's writing to Christians, and he says, no, let me back up. He blends the two tenses. He tells them in the present tense. By the way, we got like 3 minutes here, so if you got a point,
finish it up,
I'll make this one. Yeah. He says, "Put off all these things," but then at the end of verse 9, he says, "Since you have put off the old man with his deeds." So he's blending those two tenses, same scenario that we had in the previous verses, in verses 5 through 7.
Between present and past.
The present and the past. You may have become a Christian, but don't think that just because you became a Christian that these things automatically went away.
Right.
You've got to stay on top of it. So, okay. So let's wrap this up. Zach, summarize what we've talked about in 3 words or less.
Don't wear clothes with stains on them. Put on some new clothes. Put on Christ.
Zach is not a math major.
Bless is a 4-letter word. I mean, 1, 2, 3. I mean, 5.
Pablo, anything to add?
Don't put anything about God, no?
I know one thing we need to add. Happy birthday, Pablo.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Pablo.
Muchas gracias. Yes, one more. 1 year left of my life. 1 more year left.
Wow, that's a positive outlook right there. That's
positive. Yes, you can thank your father for that bright, sunshiny outlook on life.
Go enjoy your birthday. Have some fun. Go take you a stroll through Callao. Do something. Do something eventful.
Listen. Don't leave here and go in and see your father and say, "Oh, Dad, you're still alive."
Yeah.
He probably would not appreciate that. But
Keith, I had a coach. I'm going to close with this.
I actually have a soccer game today. I'm all dressed up and ready.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That will be fun. You
I've got
guys
a.
priority.
I know where I'm
God's
going to
word.
end with here. Once had a coach got mad at me. And he said, "I've got 3 words for you." He said,
What?
"You're just not playing hard."
So that's where you learned it from, huh?
That's where I learned it from.
There you
Yeah,
go.
man.
Okay.
That's
We
it.
are, yeah, we're out of time now. Thank you for listening. And again, happy birthday to Pablo.
Muchas gracias.
You can leave some birthday greetings on our Facebook post when it comes out. Of course, yeah. Anyway, and we want to say thanks for listening. Go to our website and scroll down to the bottom and sign up for the email updates. Very important. Very, very important.
Mucho
Any final
importante.
words?
Have a nice day.
That's good.
If you got a holy shirt, throw it in the garbage. Nobody wants any holes in your shirt.
There you go.
Don't wear clothes with stains.
Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next week.